Hey freight agents, are you tired of being held back? Since 2012, Tallgrass Freight has built a proven track record at the top-tier independent freight agent network, and we're just getting started. Here, our agents get the best of both worlds, the freedom to be true entrepreneurs paired with the full support of a company that has their back, uncapped commission, zero territory restrictions, and a world-class back office. At Tallgrass, you're never just a number. You're part of a network that values independence, celebrates success, and invests in your future. Whether you're a solo agent or leading a team, Tallgrass gives you the tools, transparency, and flexibility to grow your business on your terms. No corporate red tape, no micromanaging, just freedom, support, and unlimited potential. To join our team, visit tallgrassfreight.com/podcast. That's tallgrassfreight.com/podcast. Welcome to the Recruiting Stories Podcast, where we celebrate recruiting by exploring the stories of leaders and top performers by digging into their stories and understanding how recruiting has impacted their journey and their success. Welcome to the next edition, guys, of the Recruiting Stories Podcast, sponsored by our sponsor, Tallgrass Freight. If you're interested in becoming a freight agent, feel free to reach out to me or go to their website, www.tallgrass.com/podcast, to learn more. Today, guys, our guest is the one and only Beau King. Beau, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here, man.
Yeah. So Beau is a pricing and market strategist with KCH. Beau, what does that entail? Can you give us like a lowdown of what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah. So, one of the probably more facing items I do is that monthly market update. It's something where I try to put what's going on in the market in as digestible terms as I can and let everybody know. But that's just one small piece of it. What I really try to do behind the scenes is help with the contract and spot strategy for the organization. I've helped build tools that allow us to be able to price more freight, be able to segment it, be able to kind of visualize what we're going after, and really create strategies to go after freight and understand our network. Because I think that's important today. I've been in this industry 17 years, and I started with hey, you get a file, you try to price it the best you can, but nobody wants that anymore, right? You got to have the data, you got to have understanding what you can control, what you can understand, that's what we do. I also communicate to the entire organization. I'll send daily or weekly updates if anything's kind of coming to bear, and because the market's always moving, and as you can see, it's volatile as heck this year.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, if you guys haven't, listeners to the podcast, check out the market updates that KCH puts out. I was just talking offline with Beau. I really enjoy reading them. I think they're really helpful. And they kind of pull a lot of different strings from the markets and economies and what's going on in the world to how this impacts freight and transportation. And I think highly of them. For you, what is, I guess, basically, what's KCH focused on? Are you guys focused on a singular mode or type of transportation, or is it all full truckload, or what does that look like for you?
They actually have a pretty good mix. I've come from two of the larger brokerages, and we can get into that.
Yeah.
KCH is within the top 100, but their kind of bread and butter has been able to reach all modes, really. And I know people can talk about that, but there's very few people that I've seen be able to do bulk well, right? So they're able to do bulk. They've built a big flatbed presence. That's a good chunk of the freight that we have here. We've also just focused on the networks that we're able to serve. I think one of the greater parts about the organization is just the authenticity and understanding what we can do and what we can't. And if we're going to commit to something, we kind of commit to it, and we understand that. So it's truckload, drayage, intermodal, bulk, flatbed, you name it, expedited services. We can do it all.
That's cool. You mentioned earlier about, reaching out to the company if something's coming down the pike. So like in the situation, for instance, like the tariffs, suddenly you see that, hey, there's these broad tariffs that are happening. Like, are you just like typing up like everybody brace for impact? Like what does that look like? How does that work?
Well, I mean, some things are gonna impact you tomorrow, right? Some things are gonna impact you next week. Some things are gonna impact you 3 months from now. So I really try to keep a horizon line at like all different points there. So if we're looking at the holiday, I've already kind of talked about how we're going to approach this holiday season back in September, right? And I may kind of build upon those things. I may reiterate some of those things. But those are the forward-looking things that you have to actually work on today for you to get the results 3 to 6 months or a year from now. So there's obviously that. But then there's, this last week, I think I was a little bit surprised even seeing the snow up here. It was across the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Every year you get hurricanes that come through, you get the polar vortexes, so things like that. Hey, this is an area that's going to get really tough, right? Or you're going to see a lot of capacity leave it. Looking at the indices that we look at every day and related to our networks and say, we're exposed here, we're not as exposed there. We have opportunities, for arbitrage really, to maximize where we can, and just small discussions around that, discussing, how to manage freight, how to operate it, how to kind of think outside the box. So any kind of number of things there.
Yeah. So take me back, because I want to know how you ended up as a pricing and or market strategist, economies guy, because you didn't start there, right?
No.
Tell me a little bit about your background. We talked offline, Virginia Tech Hokie originally. So like, how'd you find your way into transportation and then into this world?
So, like most people in 2008, there was the great financial crisis. So you kind of got what you could get. Um, luckily, luckily, I dodged a little bit of a bullet because I had an opportunity to be a mortgage loan officer that was extended to me that summer. So, did not take that opportunity. But I dated somebody that worked at the CH Robinson office in Roanoke as an intern.
Mhm.
Got to see a little bit about how they operated, liked how they operated, so kind of understood that company and knew they had a branch in Richmond. Reached out, they had an open role, and kind of started from there. That was the ops side though. I have my heart in the ops side. I was a carrier rep. I had no intention of ever kind of getting to this point, but I do remember there was a guy that would write kind of like I do to the organization in those days, and he would have like little blog entries. And I thought, man, I would love to do that one day. Just kind of teach everybody about, you know, about how to just think about the market, how to think about markups versus margins, how to think about, how you price. And obviously it's taken me 17 years to get to this point, but a lot of it was just operating, learning, building upon what I did, starting there again with the procurement side at CH Robinson, and then moving all the way over to the sales side once I got to
Yeah.
XPO. So after about 8.5 years there, I went to XPO, RXO. I was really on the sales side, like I said. It's kind of done on the
And
on the
let me
on
interrupt you real
procurement. But go
fast.
ahead.
With XBO, you were on the brokerage side to begin.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Actually, I kind of followed my old boss there. He was a regional kind of manager for our group in
Mhm.
Richmond, and then he went to XPO, and then a couple of years after, right when they acquired Conway,
Mhm.
basically we reconnected, and he said, "Hey, I have all this opportunity coming from the LTL side. They
Mhm.
are, they're obviously looking at the LTL, but any company that they're working with LTL has the stuff that's not going to fit on LTL. Then their truckload components, all those. So we were able to kind of build off of that. It was a cold start branch, so it means it kind
Mm.
of just started out of the thin air, right? And we were able to grow that branch pretty well. So started on the sales side. I was really excited about. I dealt with 60 different outside LTL reps, and I told
Wow.
them just give me anything you could. And
Yeah.
that really started my um, my journey into understanding what else could fit. Right, what else
Mhm.
could we use? Thinking outside the box, working with um, kind of my mentor there. Of hey, like we have a box problem really at the end of the day, and you have how
Yep.
many pallets, what kind of product can fit in that box, and what's the best way to get it there for your customer, at the best price, at the best service to get it there. And really kind of built from there. Went to sales and
Mm.
ops, and then finally in the last couple years, I'd say in the last 5 years, is really when I started to drift more towards that pricing side. um,
That's cool.
I got the ability to interview into a role while I was at XPO, turning into RXO, to help manage the spot pricing side. We had an
Mm.
automated pricing. arm that was starting to grow, and I was able to jump on that and build that program to pretty big heights, over $130 million in revenue a year through doing automated pricing, being able to stand up automated processes and the API connections with customers, with third-party services, managing the algorithms. So I started to really get back into that tech side. I really understand the products, how those are built, and really just started to understand like how an organization works at that level outside of just pricing, just operations, just sales, and really started putting those things all together. And through that entire journey, I just learned. Just you get one question that leads to another. Why does this work this way? Why
Hmm.
does this happen this way? And what you end up with is understanding the economy, because the economy. If you understand the economy, you understand how freight moves, right? Because
Right.
freight is the economy at the end of the day.
Right. I'm going to ask a selfish recruiting question just because that's what I do. You talked earlier about your you reconnected with someone that helped you get and kind of start that cold start branch. Was
Yeah.
that someone, either the prior colleague, or how did that happen? Was that like the catalyst that got you to that other office? How did you find your way there?
Yeah. So, like I said, procurement for 8.5 years. I started in the cradle to the grave, as many people did back in that day.
Right. Yeah.
But as CH Robinson grew, they were going to split models, and then eventually kind of regional models. And at that point, I was looking for other opportunities. You're in a career for going on 10 years. Getting
Yeah.
closer
Sure.
to 10 years. You're wondering what you can do on the next side.
What else? Yeah.
So then I had my prior boss, like I said, when I first started there, he was the Northeast manager.
Hmm.
Learned a lot from him, and he was leading that branch with a couple folks at the time, and we just really had a conversation about where he was, and had the opportunity to go and sell, to be
Yeah.
a salesperson versus just procurement, and it was just awesome because it was we were both figuring it out. We were both trying to figure out where his strengths were, my strengths were, and really just learn from it. He's one of his name is Todd Gravely. I don't know if he wants his name out there or what, but he's a great guy. One of the sharpest people that I've met and learned from. He was able to wiggle out of so many damn situations. He was able to teach me so much.
Yeah.
There's just so much that you have to figure out. You're thinking on your feet all the time, and he
Yep.
was continuously able to do that. So I learned so much
That's
from him.
cool. It's so interesting to me, just everybody's story, because sometimes your best your best opportunity is through an old connection, many
Yeah.
times. And so in my world, so many times it's, well, obviously we place new people that we connect with every year, but there's every year, we'll place a ton of people who we talked to 3 years, 5 years, 8 years ago, where it's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like we had that conversation and there was a relationship there, or they somebody knew somebody. And I always tell people, like, always start with your own network. If you start to look around and say, hey, is it time to look for something else? And so that's why I asked the question. Just curious, kind of how you got there, what the relationship was, and it's a great place to start, is to kind of go to your natural network and talk with people and see what they
Yeah.
got going on. So it's very cool.
Yeah, that's how I
Um,
got here. KCH too. Henry
mhm.
Byers. I met him at conferences years ago at Freight Waves, and kind of knew of each other. And um, he saw some of the updates that I was putting out, and brought me to leadership. So yeah, and they definitely deal with it. Any part of the network too, not even just people that so closely. So it was
Yeah,
awesome. Appreciate him fully for it.
that's so cool. That's so cool. Um, Well, cool. And so, okay, so then catch me up then. That's how you got here, was through a connection at a conference, you said. Do you
Yeah.
do a lot of conferences at this point today, or no?
No, no, I don't do. If there are some, I'll go. Freightwaves did have their one in Chattanooga while I was in town, so I got to meet up with a lot of folks from the industry, which was pretty cool. It's
Mhm.
always good to do that. I do like their conferences, but I'd like to go to more to expand. Again, we handle different modes here. We have good connections with the steamship lines and the forwarders too. So getting more into that space and understanding that world, be happy to do so.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I'm obviously, in what I do, it's like a natural thing. But I encourage people, like, if you, whether it's like your local city transportation club, or it's going to a conference that's coming through your city. Like, I mean, those connections, it might help for business, it might help for a job opportunity, next year or 10 years down the line. But it's just amazing how sometimes those small connections can make really, really big differences. So that's super cool.
For sure.
I wanted to, we were talking about this earlier too. In your world, all right, there's obviously a ton going on. And you know, you've been in the game a little bit longer than I have, but I was telling someone the other day, it feels like it's been maybe like more volatile than I've ever seen in like the past like 5 to 6 years. Like it's just like it feels like highs and lows. So I wanted to ask you some questions. Have some friends, listeners of the show that I was like, hey, we have uh, pricing market expert on here. So putting you on the hot seat, Beau. Hope that's
Okay.
okay.
That's fine. I'll see if I can answer. If I can, I'll let you know.
Well, okay, so easy. We'll throw a softball to start here, just to get us going. I think the first question is like, what's your general like, I don't know, overview or sentiment of the economy right now? Like generally speaking, like what's it look like and where are we heading? Are they good, bad? Like where are we?
I would like to say not getting worse, but it's not going to be great for any amount of time, I guess. And any amount of time, I would say, is that at least that kind of 3 to 6 month mark.
Hmm.
You do see that the labor market has been softening a little bit. There's worries about a lot of the layoffs there, and people are waiting for the other kind of shoe to drop.
Hmm.
I obviously think there's a lot of anxiety around that, and rightfully so. But we just dealt with such a tumultuous year that I think a lot of people put things on pause left and right. And as we're entering the fourth quarter, making decisions to just hire people or to invest in the business in the fourth quarter in the second half of the year just wasn't fully there. I don't think so. A lot of the drivers of the market in terms of the inventories that come in and flow at Q3 to Q4, housing market, oil and gas, all those things do not have a growth driver over any kind of immediate horizon. So for me, I do think that there's optimism. At least you can see it from the manufacturing end and how they view things 6 months forward. There's like it or not, there's going to be tax incentives
Right.
for businesses to be able to utilize and deploy. Putting yourself on hold through this last year allows you to have capex that you're able to deploy.
Hmm.
Um, Now I know that the housing market may not be able to move that much, but any kind of incremental or marginal movement is going to be good for us. But again, I don't see that till maybe Q1, Q2.
So we'll talk about a couple of those kind of as we go. Let's talk about you talked about housing there at the end. Trump obviously throwing out the whole 50-year mortgage rate
Yeah.
this week. What are your thoughts on housing prices? Is that sustainable? Will they go up or down? Interest rates? Do you think a 50-year mortgage is realistic, and will that spur economic spend, kind of loose change in the consumer's pocket? What does that look like?
Yeah, I don't like that one. I don't think a lot of folks like that 50-year mortgage. The first part is the interest that you're putting on somebody over that term, right? You
Yeah.
can get a lower payment, but that's the number one trick that happens at the car dealership, right? Your car is $30,000, but you can pay it in 4 years or you can pay it in 7 years. Obviously, that's going to change your payment, but you're still going to make a high payment. And if you have to get to 50 years, you're probably reaching at something that's at the limit of affordability anyway. So that one is a tougher one for me to swallow. I'd love for the interest rates to really help us out, but that has to really do with the kind of long end of the yield curve there, not so much on what the Fed can do just today. So I hope that moves. I hope that marginally gets some folks some relief because that's kind of what's best to help with the affordability at this point, right? I remember moving, everybody kind of shuffled or moved around, but my current house is at a at a percentage a lot lower than my other one, but I'm making the same payment, right? Because I have double the interest rate. So
Mhm.
just 1%, 2%, I think is going to do a lot better than just having a 50-year. So If
Yeah.
that spread can come down, if the overall interest rates can come down a little bit, I think enough will thaw. And again, we catch that wave starting in maybe March, April of next year when housing inventory starts to come back on. I think is going to be something to watch out for at least.
Yeah. So your thought is like if we could do more as a government society to focus on lowering that interest rate, that would benefit us more than something like a mechanism like a 50-year interest rate or
Yes.
50-year mortgage, etc. Yeah. All right, but play
Yeah.
devil's advocate though, because I think I'm on the same page with you. But say we
Yep.
have 50-year mortgage rates. Everybody starts jumping into those refinancing, freeing up probably not a lot, but $200 or $300 a month. And there is tariff stimulus checks that are suddenly flooding into. Are we cutting off our nose to save our face at this point? And we have like fake like market and then consumer demand because people have more to spend? Or do you think that probably never sees the light of day? Something like that.
I wouldn't put it, these days I wouldn't put it past anybody to see that come to fruition. I just,
Yeah.
we've already saw and we've already gone through one of those waves where, we had liquidity and people spent and inflation happened, right? And
Mm.
we're still dealing with that. So as much as it would be nice to really catch some more demand, a good demand wave, we're going to end up paying for it. And our
We'd
debt
have an
doesn't,
inflation wave to follow.
yes. And then you get the same, like you mentioned, the last couple of years of volatility, and it's because of these things that create these bullwhip effects. And
Hmm.
I think that's one of the last things that we really want is just another bullwhip. A nice little wave is good. We understand this market is cyclical, but just to get a sugar high, I don't think it's going to get us there. You need
Yeah.
structural things to get people out of houses. Right now, even I think there's a stat that 40% of people own their houses outright.
Hmm.
So, the amount of people that are going to be served by this, maybe 10 to 15% of the market when everybody else is, they're not going to use it. Somebody
Right.
else who can cash out, get equity, they're going to get a 15-year, they're going to get a 30-year. They're not going to reach into that. So
Right.
I don't think it's good.
Okay, cool. So thinking about just economy again broadly, um, one of the questions is there's a lot of conflicting information out there that's could be good, could be bad, but for like the average person, right, who's not we're not a data analyst, what are the key indicators that we should watch to reveal the direction of the economy? Like what's a thing that would tip us off that we should pay attention to?
The biggest one I think is labor. Just how many people are employed, how many people are unemployed, how quickly is that moving? Because you need people to have paychecks to consume things, and consumption is 70% of this economy, right?
Yes.
So
Right.
it may be in services, it may be in goods, hopefully more in goods because that gives me more freight to deal with, right? But as long as people have jobs, they will be spending. Now, are they going to spend a lot more than they did yesterday, having to go into debt? We're seeing some of that. That's not great, but you're not going to be able to grow quickly unless you add people. But then if people detract from the workplace, that's when it gets scary. That's when
Yeah.
that consumption falls. So that's one of the biggest one. Obviously we can watch housing. I don't think we're going to see anything one way or the other really kind of rip up or down. But that's obviously another huge driver of the economy. So again, it's just labor for me. It's labor and then the wages. Our real wages picking up, and that's something that we've actually
Right.
seen is real wages are actually picking up again. So there is not so much that gap that we had in 2023, right? I think DoorDash had a recent report just showing that too. So wages are outpacing their price increases at the restaurant level, which is adds more pressure. But I think overall, people working and having higher wages ends up helping the economy overall. So that's the biggest
Yep.
one that I look at really.
Having job, making money, having the ability to spend, which creates
Yes.
demand. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, okay, real quick, going back to interest rates, that's one of the questions. If they were to increase, would you expect a freight demand rise that would be meaningful with that?
If they decrease or if they increase.
If they decrease, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's all right. If they decrease, I mean, that immediately hits some of the disposable incomes, right? So if the interest rate goes down, your credit cards and some of those things, you get less pressure there. Small business certainly can get some help on that front. I think the terms, the rates that you have to get as a smaller business are tougher, and a lot of those are they have to renew those contracts. So if they're any higher, it's going to be worse for them. So if they actually get relief, that's more money to put back in the business, hire more people, invest. So I really think it would have a decent effect, and it wouldn't just be some big sugar high thing. The only unfortunate piece is you don't want too much of it at once, because then that means people are losing their jobs, right? We're not gonna drop interest rates willingly too much unless we have to, and if we have
Right.
to, we're not wanting to.
Makes sense. Um, I was reading your update for November uh, yesterday. It felt like the idea was maybe 2026 is a market recovery. So I think the question is, are we entering a freight market recovery, or is oversupply like still suppressing rates? What do you see there?
Hmm. I'm hopeful that 2026 is at least setting the table to see an increase from today, right? And any increase from today is going to be helpful for the capacity side. I do not think that we have just so much abundant capacity as we did yesterday, as we did a year ago. I think it's spread pretty thin across the networks.
Mhm.
You see, on employment levels are really back to 2018, and you need drivers to drive trucks at the end of the day. So it doesn't matter how many trucks you have, how many trailers you have, you need people to do it, and there's just not as many people. And then what we've seen too is, even though the demand has fallen, the rejections are still higher. The load to truck ratios are still higher. So what's going to happen is any demand lift, any small demand lift, is actually going to push a lot harder on supply, I think, in this cycle than what we've seen before. In COVID, we just saw demand outstripped, right? Like you let a lot of people go, and then we had a lot of demand, had a huge time doing catch up. We're at a point where right now we have too many carriers out there that you have to be able to move around the country. You move one carrier, you have a couple drivers of 100-person outfit, you can have them deploy somewhere else rather easily, instead of trying to get 10 different providers, send one guy to someplace, right? So I think
Right.
that's kind of where we are today. But any demand lift against that is going to be helpful, and I see that we're going to at least get some. We're hoping that we at least get some into 2026 for
Right.
the reasons that we said before. It just, we have a little bit more room to run. I think there's a little bit more opportunity to deploy and invest in 2026, and hopefully we start seeing that in January. Now, I don't know what that means for the stock market. That may
Right.
go in a different way, but
Right.
not that many people, in the economy, the modern or the normal economy, are holding stocks to that level. So,
Yeah, they seem somewhat detached, the general economy and the stock market, at least
yeah,
lately.
yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that goes too. And obviously, there are things like AI. Do you see that? I mean, is that, the easy question is like, is AI a bubble? Do you see that impacting freight and transportation from a demand standpoint? Obviously, I think there's merit to the use case within the industry, but what, I guess, are your thoughts there?
Mm. I think AI is a transformative technology.
Hmm.
I also think the computer was transformative technology, right? The container was a transformative technology, but did all that value go to the investors at the end of the day? It didn't. It went to certain people, certain companies, the people that are able to utilize that technology. So I can see some big winners. There may be some incumbents that are out there today that are using it in different ways. You're obviously seeing that CH Robinson, they're using it to leverage to get efficiencies, but at some point, if you're just using it for cost saving, if you're just using it for efficiency, there's only so much that you're going to be able to get. And if
Hmm.
you are chasing those, all you're doing really at the end of the day is cheapening your own service, unfortunately, because then
Right.
everybody else is making it more efficient, everybody else is cheaper. So then, again, that kind of value escapes you. So you have to be able to utilize it to create value. And I think that's where folks really need to kind of think about with AI. I do think we're in a bubble, in the sense that we just can't keep spending for this infrastructure at the pace that we're
Yeah,
doing forever,
yeah.
right? We just can't, and then
Trillions
these
of
companies
dollars
have to
are
be
thrown out.
profitable. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it's been okay for the flatbed market because it's, all of that construction, but it's tabling
right.
off. It's going to table at some point, and that's really what it's all predicated on. It's not on OpenAI or Claude being able to, get enough revenue or get enough profit over the next 5 years, because I don't know where that pathway is for them. $10 billion is what I think they saw as a loss with the Microsoft deal just in a quarter. I mean,
Hmm.
that's subsidizing. That's
Yep.
subsidizing the market, as we saw, I think, in the 2000s with the tech sector, and we're kind of doing it again. And um, if we can do it long enough to where the rest of the S&P can pick up, then I think we may be all right. But as you mentioned, like the Mag 7 are the only ones keeping the index afloat. So
Yep.
that's kind of where I'm at there.
I'm with you. I feel like, you know, I don't valuations have to make sense at some point. Like we have to, it can't be on paper, forever. Like it has to at some point, pencil out. And so far it's like, this is all very exciting, but at
Yeah,
some point we're going to have to pay the piper. And I think that's what I'm most afraid of. So,
yeah,
um, I want to loop back to something you said earlier. You talked a little bit about, having drivers in the seat, and the need, obviously drivers in the seat to move trucks. The new legislation affecting non-domiciled drivers and carriers. What's your perspective on how that impacts the marketplace?
that may have been rescinded in the last couple of days. I'm
Okay.
not fully sure, but the one thing I will say about it is it's not as drastic, I don't think, as some believe it would be.
Okay.
There are numbers that I think that can, decrease in overall capacity. You can put 5-10% out there, but it's going to happen over time because they have to do it when they renew. So I don't think it's going to be everybody all at once. You're not going to just see a sharp cut in capacity. But on the owner operator side, I do see that you're probably going to have more propensity for that, right? The ones that kind of create their own business, they're the ease at which you can kind of create the business and get the CDLs through the mills that have been out there. I think you're going to have a little bit more weight of folks that are affected there. But then again, at the end of the day, the 1-2 kind of owner operator is long tail, so you can cut off a decent amount and still not cut all of capacity by a ton. I do think it's going to cause more friction. I do think when you start putting things out there, I know the English language proficiency may not be the biggest deal in the world. Jason Miller's been talking about deterrence quite a bit, and I
Hmm.
tend to agree with him. But as somebody who's been in the industry, when you're talking to a driver, talking to a shipper, you're kind of in between, and you have to deal with one more hurdle to get the load booked, or to
Yep.
get the driver there,
Yep.
or to verify. Those kind of things, those frictions only serve to increase price or make it hard to cover. So I do see that actually having impacted the margins, and that at the end of the day, the immigration, we're not seeing immigration come into the company, so your labor supply is kind of tighter there in that regard.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm interested to see how all of that shakes out because, I'm not sure where, I mean, certainly in the name of, fraud, and things like that, everybody wants less fraud, I
Yes.
think, across the industry, right? How we get there and what are the right levers to pull? I think that's the question. Is that better technology? Is that less friction? Is that some of this legislation? What exactly is that? But clearly when you look at, um, you know, um, the level of both fraud in the market and then just, how things like this can affect capacity. It's in a time where we already have like demand issues and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, just a lot to throw on the plate. I think for
Yes.
everybody. So.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Let me ask you this: is can we kind of wrap up some of this, hot seat stuff here?
Yeah,
um,
that's fine.
you know,
It's fun.
what's up?
I said it's fun.
Good.
I'm glad I can be able to answer, and I didn't know, I didn't have anything prepared, so it's good to just kind of riff and see where I land here.
Sure, sure. You're doing great. You're killing it. So I appreciate it. um, I think, you know, we got a variety of people who, listen, to the podcast. Could be owners, executives of transportation companies, people starting out in their career. Somebody maybe is like a young freight broker. You know, um, think you when you were first getting started, what would you point them to just from both I guess advice for what to do to succeed in the industry and or where to look for the right information when it comes to pricing, economics, etc.
Wow, that's a good question. Um, One of the biggest things that I think that I wish I would have done a little bit earlier. You get impatient. You're younger. You're impatient. You want things to kind of develop pretty quickly for you. I was one of the first, graduates of college in my family. Feel like you get a degree and you're, hey, now I got a job that they're going to pay me. I made it. No, you just begun, right? So I think you have to kind of have a mentality of an investment portfolio.
Mm,
Know that if you kind of keep at it, you just keep at it over time. It's going to compound and it's eventually going to work for you. And one of the things that you have to consistently do is be curious, understand the business that you're in, understand the business of and the roles of people around you as you grow, because you're not going to just do one thing all the time in your own little silo. The folks that get stuck in silos, those are the ones that can't grow. You can become a professional, you can become very skilled at a certain thing, but if you really kind of want to grow over time, you're going to have to understand where you sit among your customers, among the peers that are sitting next to you or in your department or the department over. And I think understanding a lot of those things helps you inevitably put things together and find solutions. One of the other ones I would say is just look for some hairy problem. Look for them, but the
mm,
hairy problems.
yes.
They're there for a reason. Everybody goes after the low hanging fruit for a reason. But if you can solve a problem that everybody else kind of said this, left for dead, you
Oh yeah.
revived it, right? You get all that praise. And then if you
Yep.
fail, which you're going to in cases, you learn something that you're going to use for the next time. So really, it's that kind of patience, being able to invest in yourself over time, knowing that you're not going to be in the same role today,
Hmm.
over that many years, and really just kind of invest in yourself. And that's not saying just like take it easy or just let it kind of come to you. You have to be consistent over time, but you're investing in yourself over the long term.
That's so good, man. I love that. One of the things that you said that I want to like reiterate, that I agree with so much is like looking for the hairy problem. Like one thing I tell young people too is like listen. Like maybe say you're like maybe I don't want to do what I'm doing for the rest of my life. It's my first job or something like that. I always tell people like young people look or listen to what your boss is complaining about. Like, hey, this never gets done. This is
Yeah.
difficult. This is hard. I need people to do this. Whatever that is, like, go do the heck out of it and like
Yeah.
take care of that problem for them. And if you can do that, whether that's, hey, that's a cold call, or I'm taking care of this spreadsheet, or I'm tracking this data. I mean, suddenly, like you said, like now I'm a hero, because I've done something that I've simplified for everybody else, or I've proven that the hard thing is doable, and you know, uh, you'll you'll find opportunities that way. So I love that. It's really good.
Thank you. Yeah.
What kind of looking forward here, right? I guess what are the biggest threats kind of as we go into 2026? Like I don't want to be like doom and gloom, right? Obviously we want good things, we want demand, we want a market recovery. What are the threats that you see out there that could like tank things and make, cause trouble, I guess, for the industry in general?
Yeah, so the bubble that everybody knows could
No.
see.
Yeah.
It just kind of when is it popping and for who?
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the harder parts about having so much of the spending right now weighted to the top 10-20% who also own that is there's a wealth effect there. So as long as your 401k is doing okay, as long as your investments are doing okay, you're going to be spending money. But the economy right now is really dragging on that percentage I call holding up the margin economy. They're not holding up the volume economy, right? They're not getting the lower end stuff. They're doing the margin economy. So when that finally drops because of that wealth effect, that could cause problems.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if that spending drops by such a large cohort, I think that could cause problems back to the point of consumption. When consumption
Yep.
falls, jobs lose. So if we get in a scenario like that, that's the one that kind of keeps me up at night.
Yep.
But I also don't like to be so doom and gloom. I'm kind of the silver lining guy, so
Yeah,
I try to
sure.
stay on the optimistic side of that.
Yeah. No, I went back to what you were saying earlier of like, it's a consumer, um, you know, driven economy, right? And when the consumer is strong in the United States, we seem to thrive. Things seem to go well. But
Yeah,
if that suffers, right? If there's not, you know, um, extra spending, there's not, things, outside the norm. They're not outside the norm, but luxuries, so to speak, traveling, your Amazon purchases, so on and so forth, food
yeah,
and travel and all that. Um, that's when it gets a little murky for supply chains and um, everybody. I think
yeah.
makes me worry. Well, cool, man. I've enjoyed this conversation. This has been really, really good. So, for you, if somebody wanted to like follow, your monthly update, they want to get a hold of you, where do they go? How do they do that?
All right. Yeah, so LinkedIn's probably the easiest where you're going to see me post those out. We do put it on the website as well. But LinkedIn Beau King. If you want to reach me via email, just kind of have any discussion at any point, Beau King at kchtrans.com.
Mhm.
But really just kind of look out at the first couple days of the month. I'm not really set on just the first or whatever, but within that first week, we really like to tell people what's going on over the next couple months ahead. And that's one of the prime places we put it out there. Also, subscribe to our newsletter. We have some cool new newsletters, the Ship Show, and then
Mhm.
we also have a new one for carriers too. So look into that. We have a cool group that really understands the market from multiple levels in the organization.
Awesome, very good. Last question here before I let you go, Bo. What books would you share that have been influential or helpful to you on your journey to this point?
Couple have some honorable mentions too.
Okay.
But Against the Gods, it's the remarkable story of risk. Man, that's such a good book. I'm not like I wasn't the best at math. I wasn't. I'm not some MIT math major. I do percentages. I know addition, subtraction really well, and I think that's about what you need for the pricing environment. But what that book really kind of walk through is just the history of like probability statistics and why we develop these things, not just hey to be able to play dice better. It's to understand like the average person, and there is no average person, but when you look at it from like a data perspective as a actuary or in insurance, it can tell you a whole lot, or those things can tell you a whole lot about the world. Probability allowed us to look into the future and make ideas about what are the chances of this versus that happening, and that allows us to make plans and investments and things like that. And that's really what kind of created the stock market and allowed capitalism at the end of the day, or are those kind of mechanisms. So you don't kind of think about that when you're in class, obviously, right? But those things and how they all kind of build upon each other and who was involved. I mean, that was a great book.
Awesome. Yeah,
I'll give you two more real quick.
sure. Yeah.
Endurance, Shackleton's Incredible Voyage. I mean, you can't read that book and not come out of it just in awe. What that guy had to endure in I think it was the South Pole. I think in the
Mhm.
South Pole, he was trying to get to the middle of the South Pole. They ended up getting stuck in the ice right outside of Antarctica, and it took like a year and a half, 2 years for them to finally get saved. And he had
Yeah.
people were rowing in a boat for 5 days straight in like 0 degree weather with ice forming on their arms and like
Yeah.
I just cannot believe going through some of the things that they went through. It's the
Yeah.
most intense. So you leave that book and you're like, my problems aren't so bad.
Life's not too
I can
bad.
handle
Yeah.
a lot, right? So
That's
that
great.
endurance, it's also a pretty good skill, I think, that's underrated. But finally, I guess one of the biggest ones too is I think Vaclav Smil. It's how the world really works. And this is really about just like the feedstocks that drive the world. You're talking about
Mm,
ammonia, steel, cement,
yeah.
just
Cool.
how big those industries are and what they
Yeah.
do to kind of create the world that we know around us. Plastics. So those books I think are really great to kind of get an understanding of how the world works or how it's kind of
Yeah.
developed and learn a little bit about how to dig deep.
What was the last one called?
It was called "How the World Really Works" by Vaclav
Otherworldly.
Smil. Yep.
I will definitely have all those on the show notes. But I love books like that because I think there's just so many things that we take for granted, right? Like on how the world operates, how something shows. I mean, obviously logistics, how something shows up at the grocery store, that at our house,
Yep.
the process in which that gets there, to have the conveniences and commodities that we do is mind blowing. Like when you actually
Yeah.
like look into it and read about it, and we just live in such an advanced society today that it is, when you think about a book like Endurance, it's like my problems aren't too bad. Like life's pretty good when I can
Yeah.
click a
Yeah.
button on Amazon and something show whatever,
Yeah.
shows up at my door tomorrow. So that's amazing. Well, Bo, man, I really appreciate it. It's been really fun. Thank you for taking the time, and hopefully this will be helpful to a bunch of folks across the industry. Um, I'll make sure that information that Bo talked about is in the show notes, so you can reach out and connect with him. And we will make sure that you guys have that available, and hopefully we have some exciting demand for 2026, and we have a market recovery
Absolutely.
and not anything crazy. So we'll check in maybe next year.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it being on, man. It's a great
Thanks, Bo.
conversation.
We'll see you. Thanks for listening to the Recruiting Stories podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on LinkedIn. Adrian Chapman and Cover 3 Consulting is our company page. Also check out our website, www.cov3consulting.com. Again, thanks for joining us, and we just simply want to remind you that you can change the world by putting people in a position where they can do the most good, and you do that by recruiting. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.